Hello, Star Wars fans. Today, we're tackling one of the most hotly debated matchups in the entire galaxy far, far away. Who would win in a battle between Starkiller, Darth Vader's secret apprentice, and Luke Skywalker, the legendary Jedi who brought balance to the Force? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Starkiller isn't even canon anymore, right? Well, here's the thing. Whether canon or legends, these characters exist in the Star Wars universe we all love. And this comparison tells us something fascinating about the nature of power, training, and destiny in Star Wars. So let's explore this together, keeping it calm and thoughtful because both of these warriors deserve our respect. First, let's talk about Galen Marek, better known as Starkiller. If you haven't played the Force Unleashed games, you might not know his story. Born to two Jedi Knights who fled the Order, Galen was discovered as a child by Darth Vader on Kashyyyk. After killing his father, Vader sensed something extraordinary in this young boy. He could already manipulate the Force in ways that took most Jedi years to master. Vader took him in secret, raising him as a weapon against the Emperor. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't just training. This was 2 decades of brutal, relentless conditioning under one of the most powerful Sith Lords in galactic history. By the time Galen was a teenager, he had surpassed most Jedi Knights from the Clone Wars era. His abilities, they were honestly kind of ridiculous. We're talking Force lightning powerful enough to challenge Palpatine himself, telekinetic abilities that could redirect a falling Star Destroyer. And here's what makes him interesting. He wasn't just raw power. Vader trained him in multiple lightsaber forms through his droid Proxy, who could replicate legendary duelists like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul. But here's the crucial detail that often gets overlooked. Starkiller was designed as what Luke would have become if he joined his father on Bespin. The developers literally called him Luke's photo-negative. Even his name, Starkiller, was George Lucas's original surname for Luke in early drafts. They were born in the same year, making them the same age. One raised by Vader in darkness, one raised by moisture farmers in obscurity. Now, let's talk about Luke. On the surface, his training looks almost laughably inadequate compared to Starkiller's. A few hours with Obi-Wan on the Millennium Falcon, maybe a few weeks with Yoda on Dagobah. That's it. That's all the formal training the man who defeated the Sith Empire received. But here's what makes Luke different. His power wasn't just about training. It was about potential. Specifically, the potential of the Chosen One's bloodline. Luke carried Anakin Skywalker's Force sensitivity, the highest midi-chlorian count ever recorded. More than that, though, Luke had something Starkiller initially lacked, a connection to the light side of the Force through love and compassion. Let me give you some context about Return of the Jedi Luke, because this is crucial. By the time he faces Vader on the second Death Star, sources describe him as Vader's equal in the Force. Not just competitive, equal. Vader himself, at the peak of his power, feared that Luke might best him. The official Star Wars fact files state clearly that Luke became a match for his father, something that wouldn't have been possible without extraordinary aptitude. And if we're talking Legends Luke, friends, that's where things get really interesting. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker eventually became arguably the most powerful Force user in galactic history. We're talking about a man who could become one with the Force without dying, who defeated the cosmic entity Abeloth, who could create physical illusions of entire starships. He developed abilities that would make even Yoda look twice. So let's break down how they actually compare in different areas. In terms of raw Force power displays, Starkiller definitely has the more impressive visual feats. Redirecting that Star Destroyer, overwhelming Vader with Force lightning, using Force repulse to devastate entire groups of enemies. These are the kind of video game moments that make you feel genuinely powerful. But here's the thing we need to understand about Starkiller's Star Destroyer feat. According to the novel, that destroyer was already falling. Starkiller didn't pull it from orbit, he redirected its descent. And after doing so, he collapsed from exhaustion. It was pushing his absolute limits. This is important because it shows us that even Starkiller has boundaries to his power. Luke, particularly Legends. Luke shows a different kind of power. It's more refined, more controlled. He doesn't usually go for the massive, spectacular displays. Instead, we see him absorbing AT-AT blaster fire with Force barriers, rooting himself so completely that not even a black hole could move him, defeating scores of Yuuzhan Vong warriors while in a state of oneness with the Force. In lightsaber combat, this gets interesting. Starkiller had constant daily training against simulations of the galaxy's best duelists. Luke had minimal formal training, yet by Return of the Jedi, Luke's instinctive understanding of combat was so profound that Palpatine himself was astonished. Luke essentially learned Form Vive by watching Vader use it. then beat him with his own technique. Think about what that means. That's not just talent. That's the kind of combat genius that can't be taught. Now let's get to the actual matchup, but we need to be specific about which versions we're comparing because it matters enormously. If we're talking Force Unleashed era Starkiller versus Return of the Jedi Luke, this is actually pretty even. Starkiller has the advantage in force power variety and raw destructive output. He's not afraid to use force lightning, telekinetic attacks, and other aggressive abilities from the start. Luke, at this point, tends to rely more on his lightsaber and only uses force powers tactically. In a pure lightsaber duel, I'd give the edge to Luke. He's already proven he can match Vader, and Vader during the original trilogy era was more powerful than the Vader Starkiller faced years earlier. The sources consistently tell us Vader grew significantly in power between The Force Unleashed and the original trilogy. But if Starkiller starts using his full arsenal of force abilities, that's where Luke might struggle. Starkiller doesn't have Luke's reluctance to use aggressive force powers. He'll hit you with lightning while you're still drawing your lightsaber. However, and this is a big however, if we're talking about Legends Luke from Dark Empire or later, that's a completely different story. By that point, Luke has surpassed both Vader and Yoda. He's learned abilities Starkiller never dreamed of. He can stealth his presence completely, use electric judgment, achieve oneness with the Force. Starkiller would be outmatched. Here's what I find most fascinating about this matchup. It's not really about who would win. It's about what these two characters represent. Starkiller represents power gained through suffering and the dark side. His abilities came from years of brutal training under fear and pain. He was molded into a weapon. His journey was about discovering that there's more to life than being a tool of destruction. Luke represents power gained through connection and purpose. His strength came from his bonds with others, his unwillingness to give in to hate, his faith in his father's redemption. Where Starkiller was forged in darkness and found light, Luke was raised in light and never lost it, even when tempted. In a way, they're asking the same question from opposite directions. Can you be powerful and good? Starkiller's answer was learning that you can choose to use your power for others. Luke's answer was proving that you don't need to embrace darkness to be strong. So, who would actually win? Honestly, friends, it depends entirely on which versions of these characters we're talking about and what we mean by winning. In a straight fight between Force Unleashed Starkiller and Return of the Jedi, Luke, it could genuinely go either way. Starkiller has the more versatile force abilities and the willingness to use them aggressively. Luke has the superior lightsaber skills and the deeper connection to the Force. But if we're talking about who they eventually became, Legends Luke surpasses Starkiller by becoming something Starkiller never quite achieved. The greatest Jedi who ever lived, someone who mastered power without being consumed by it. The real answer, though, both of these warriors show us that power in Star Wars isn't just about force lightning or pulling down starships. It's about who you choose to be and what you choose to fight for. And on that measure, both Starkiller and Luke earned their place as heroes. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments who you think would win and why. May the Force be with you.